some other cool changes in the works? One, due dates. Now, this isn't as big and dramatic a change as it's been made out to be. Okay, what's the due date for a TPT 1 return? 20th. I love you guys. Starting in 2015, what's the due date for a TPT return? The 20th. What's the last day you can get a TPT return in now? Second to the last business day, I hear it. What's the last day you can get one in 2015? Second to the last business day. What changed? We used to have this little middle step that was the 25th. You could have it postmarked by then. The cities never had that. And this whole process of getting together with the cities, this is not just the Department of Revenue's taking it over, it's all our way or no way. It's, hey, what are the best practices? What do you do? What do we do? What can we do to coordinate? This is one of the things that we found was going to be a not horrible thing, and one of the things that the cities kind of held fast to, and we're good with it. So that postmark by the 25th is going away. You still have to have it in by the 20th. If you don't, you can still get in a long, long line, hand it in person, in the offices. And by the way, I know it was a long, long line because I personally have cashiered 422 payments on one payment day. So, second to last business day, postmarks going away. Why is that such a good thing for the Department of Revenue? Can you imagine us having to slit each one of those envelopes, image each one of them, and store the data so that we could go back and retrieve it? And for a period of time, while we still have the TPT-1 return in its actual original format, which is 2 years, we had to have space to store all the envelopes. Yeah, doesn't seem like a huge problem if you just send yours. What about the people who send 15 and 16 of them in the same envelope? Oh, somebody had to image it 15 or 16 times and hand handle it. We have a mail sorting process. It helps. This is something that's going to save us space in our warehouse and our data warehouse. So it seemed like a win-win. Here's something that's kind of cool. Filing frequency change. In the past, almost everybody was monthly. And then if you were lucky, you could change to be quarterly or annual. What they did in the legislative session in, I believe it was House Bill 2389, is they changed the thresholds for the filing frequencies. So, if you are 0 tax remitted to $1,999 of tax remitted in a year, you can become annual. This is an increase in the amount of tax remitted, almost double. If you are $2,000 to $8,000, you could go quarterly. If you're $8,000 and above, you have to remain monthly. Amy, how do you change your filing frequency? And the answer is you send us a letter. That's the way it's always been. You've always had to send us a letter. We've never really automatically done it since 2004. One of the things on the agenda for 2016 is we'll run a job before 2016. And if you're somebody who fits that criteria, we will move you to a less frequent filing status in 2016. So that'll be kind of neat. Yes, sir.
So how do you know, let's say that you don't send a letter and you start sending it quarterly.
You're going to get delinquency notices to tell you to file those ones in between.
So if you send the letter, how do you know the letter was received? Do you get a letter back?
You get a response back saying your filing frequency was changed. Yep, you do. He's got a good question. So I send a letter, how do I know that you got my letter? And the answer is that you'll get a letter back that says it was changed. You'll also get a letter if it was denied. And it'll tell you why. Now here's something I want to tell you, this is an inside thing. Don't just do that, I'm going to file quarterly because I could. Because one of the criteria for you to be able to file less frequently officially is that you have a good filing history with us. So if for 2 quarters you elected to just file quarterly, you're delinquent for 2 returns for the first quarter and 2 returns for the second quarter. You now have cut yourself out of being able to move officially to the less frequent filing. Because for us, there's not a difference in why you would be doing that other than just not sending it in. We don't know. It's just like the people who say, well, I didn't send it in, I had nothing to report. Well, One of the first groups of people they let go in the layoff were all those people that could tell the future and be psychic. We have no way of knowing. That's why you aren't filing, because you had nothing to report. The way we know is when you actually report. So make sure you report, send the letter. Here's another trick to the filing thing. We can't change your filing frequency in the middle of a period. Let me explain that. Let's say in 2015 you're monthly, but your best desire ever is you want to be annual. You'll already be in the middle of a year for annual, so we can't do it. But you could say to them, make me quarterly for 2015. For 2015, you file quarterly, and before the end of 2015, you send another letter that says, hey, if you look at my history, now I can go annual. Catch them before 2016, and they'll move you to annual. If you were somebody who could go annual this year, but you're monthly, because we're already in the middle of an annual period, they can't make you annual for 2015. So they could make you annual, but what they're going to tell you is you have to file monthly for all of 2015, and then in 2016, then you go annual. Just a secret trick. Yes, sir.
Sorry, one more question. Right now, with Mesa, we file monthly. And so if we wanted to do that, that's going to have to wait until 2016 when Mesa moves to the state, right?
It is my understanding that the cities are adopting the same filing frequencies.
Right now, they are?
Yes. I do not know that their mechanisms are the same to get it done, whether they do a letter or if you can request it by phone or in person. But for us, it's definitely a letter. And beginning in 2016, around the time the renewals come out, you may get a letter automatically telling you from us that we are moving your filing frequency. That's one of our goals. Yes, ma'am.
Does that letter just go to the same address as the TPT form? Or?
Yes, it would go to your official mailing address. When somebody says it's your mailing address, that's what we use it for. And sometimes that's confusing because people will have their mailing address go somewhere completely different. Yes, ma'am.
So do we still have time if we do that letter in December?
No. And the reason why is because it doesn't take effect until January 1st. So it can, that's the way. You know, laws are funny. I never knew this before I worked at Department of Revenue. So when I was in kindergarten, I was unaware because they hired me right out of kindergarten, remember? Okay. So I did not know this, but the rules with laws are they either state the day that it is taking effect or it's 90 days after the date that it was signed. And in this case, they stated the date as January 1, 2015. So we can't make the change or even affect or look at the change or have it be applicable until then. Yes?
If you're filing, let's say, a property management firm, you're filing for multiple entities, are the dollar payments based upon the individual entity or the total that you're filing?
The individual, each license stands alone. His question is he handles multiple entities and he's a property management company. Each license stands alone. And there is a rule, you'll notice on the renewal form it talks about property management companies. Property management companies have to have a separate license for each entity owning property now, where in the past that was not necessarily how they handled it. Yes?
If you were already scheduled on an annual type of return and say your sales exceeded what you had once expected, would you automatically be changed to monthly or quarterly?
That is a great question, and the answer is no.
Okay, so you would remain annual.
Yes. The law actually says, her question is if you're already annual, but you have like a boom in business and suddenly you've got a lot more tax, does it automatically look at that and go, wow, they should be filing more frequently? And the answer is no. And the reason is because you're annual. So let's say your change starts in January, February, March, and you know by the end of the year you're going to have more than annual. You still only report to us at the end of the year. So we would not find out about it until after the fact. In the sales tax rules, when you look at it, one of the things it talks about is the fact that you're responsible to do your averaging, and if you can predict that it's going to be more, you should move to a more frequent filing. It's the same with withholding. If any of you guys do withholding tax, there are different payment schedules for withholding tax, and if you have an increase in withholding that changes your average for the year above a certain level, you're supposed to pay us more frequently on your own. And it's the same basic theory.
Amy,
yes?
payments are due on the filing date?
Payments are, well, yes and no. His question is, are payments due on the filing date? And the answer is, not really. The payment is due the second to the last business day. We have some people who launch their returns and get them in by the 20th, and then hold off to that second to the last business day to launch their payment, and that's fine. If, however, you're late with your payment, and that happens, if you're late with your payment, the penalty and interest calculates all the way back to the 20th, not the second to the last business day, which is a bit of a surprise to people. Along with that, let me tell you one other long, malaised secret. Some people have told me they didn't file because they did not have the money to file. It costs nothing to file. File your return. Because our penalty system is two parts. You have a late filing penalty and a late payment penalty. Anyone want to guess what the higher of the two is? Late filing. It's 4.5% versus 0.5% for payment. If you want to save yourself money, if you already don't have the money to file and pay on time, you do always have the money to file on time. And then you save yourself more money in penalty by at least getting it filed on time. You save 4.5%. For a $100 return, that's not a lot. For a $1,000 return, that's a little bit more. For more than 1,000, it's, you know, it's just a way to save money. So I'm not advocating never pay us. I'm saying pay us smarter, file smarter, and save yourself some penalty and interest. We're not about racking up penalty and interest at the Department of Revenue. We really aren't. So you can tell people, Amy told me I can file. It's okay.